We're just over a minute and we're live.
All right.
I gotta have a drink.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Everybody, this is Dr. Pi. We are going to be launching pretty soon our show. So just stay tuned for. All right, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about gut microbiome, so stay tuned. Theo is going to be here with us as well.
You got it. I'm here.
30 seconds.
How do I turn this down?
Okay, here we go.
Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Take Back Your Health. Your hosts are Dr. Sunil Pai and Maureen Sutton, who will explain the shocking truths about healthcare, prescription drugs, food and supplement industries. They will help guide you to take back your power and feel great again. Now, here's Dr. Sunil Pai and Maureen Sutton.
Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Sunil Pai, your host at Take Back Your Health with
Maureen Sutton.
And today we're going to be talking about your gut microbiome. This is something that's very important because we will be talking about this more and more. This is a very, very important aspect of understanding how your whole immune system runs, how do you digest, absorb, eliminate your foods, and this concept will pervade through almost all our shows because the gut microbiome, along with inflammation and immune system, is almost the core foundations of your health, which I cover in an Inflammation Nation at inflammationnation.com. So with no further ado, I want to introduce our first guest today. Our guest is Theo Hanson, which he was on episode 2 of our show, which was the anti-inflammatory diet. And Theo, I think we don't need to really introduce you because they can go to the website, they can see your wonderful background. But just in short, Theo's an amazing guy, researcher, filmer, producer,
Our friend and colleague.
friend and colleague, and through eating an anti-inflammatory whole foods plant-based diet, he was able to not only help reverse his health conditions, but also, more importantly, his wife's breast cancer had a significant reduction just doing plant-based foods and juicing protocol, which he calls the Vita Protocol at thevitaprotocol.com.
And we had a wonderful retreat in Costa Rica together.
Yes, which was called Food is Medicine, and we'll be doing one of these retreats coming this August in Curacao, the Wellness Island. So, good afternoon, Theo. How are you doing today?
Electric, and I'm super scared. Oh, there we go. I'm scared that we're not going to cover everything that has to be covered on this topic.
Sure.
Right? It's crazy. So we'll all jet through as fast as I can on my parts, but I got to start by saying one of my greatest sources of learning about the microbiome has actually been you, Dr. Pai. So,
well, thank you very much.
There you go.
And it's an ever evolving study of science. Although Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine has been talking about gut health, now with the modern understanding of immune system and actually the ability to test certain things in the gut itself and understanding the microbiota, which we'll talk about, it has changed everything. And this discussion and topic will probably pervade and be the topic of 2018, along with the anti-inflammatory diet. Mm-hmm. So Theo, tell us a little bit, and the listeners, about how you got introduced to the gut microbiome and how did it become very important in your lives?
Yeah, thank you. So the first one I think was totally accidental. During the journey with Kim's health, she was responding really well to a whole body treatment, and we weren't very versed in any of this. we just didn't really have a lot of awareness besides the conventional sort of attitude of like, okay, I just go to the doctor, they give me a referral, and the next person in a white coat tells me whatever to do, and we do. But during the journey, if you know our story, it got a little bit sideways and fun. And so we had a nutrient evaluation done, which is a blood test that a lot of people aren't even aware that their doctors can do, that show you what nutrients are present in the plasma. And Kim mysteriously showed near deficient in several, but I knew that they were present in her food consumption. And so at that point, there was a recommendation to supplement. I was resistant because I'm stubborn, and we changed her probiotic schedule after a little research. And 30 days later, she was no longer deficient. And it wasn't, this wasn't like a commercial for don't supplement. This was actually, an endorsement of saying like, hey, it all matters. And we were able to prove for ourselves.
So this lab testing is really important for people to know which supplements to take, which ones
supplements to take. Make sure you're getting it in your diet. But we saw just by changing a food source and a probiotic source that Kim could then synthesize, because her diet was exactly the same every single day, which made it really easy. We were on a very specific diet. So that became mind-boggling. And then later on, I would bump into a few researchers who would say things that would make my hair catch on fire and head explode. Like, there's how much? We're like 90% something else and only 10% human. So that was kind of my on-ramp.
Right. So what I want to tell the listeners is what really the gut microbiome, and just a little 101 on what the GI tract is. Real quick is that, your GI tract is your first line of defense. Okay. Everything that comes in your body, the point of entry comes via the mouth. Okay. It even starts in the mouth itself, goes all the way through the GI tract, and then leaves out through the bottom. And so this GI tract is important because we call it the point of entry. And this is where your immune system, 80% of your immune system resides in your GI tract, called the gut-associated lymphatic tissue. Now, what that means is that just think of like the TSA officers at the airport. Everything has to go through them before they get on a plane to go anywhere, good or bad, right? And sometimes some people's systems work good and some people's don't. But what we have to understand is that this GI tract is about 35 foot long in the average person, no matter how big or how small.
All stuffed into this
and
little area.
If you go to my book, Inflammation Nation, you'll see that we have pictures of like the lining of the GI tract. Although from a scope, like when people have endoscopies, upper scopes and bottom colonoscopies, it just looks like a pink tube. Most people will see. Later on, I might show some pictures on some of the episodes. But what we'll see is that they're little fine little villi, little finger-like projections. And on those finger-like projections, they're smaller finger-like projections. So there's this large surface area of the gut. And I think, Theo might even show a picture there right now that you can see. There you go. So what happens is the surface area of this gut, if you take it out and you use an iron and you lay it flat and you iron it out, it's the size of 2 Wimbledon-sized tennis courts. So inside your GI tract, you have this amazing amount of surface area, and that's what is lined with healthy microbiome or healthy microbiota, which is considered some people probiotics, which we call, right? But the probiotics, there's good and bad, and there's in between, and there's parasites, and there's fungal organisms, but it's all a delicate balance. And this immune system is key to keeping healthy, and what we feed that gut microbiome is also important.
Yeah, so if your doctor says to you, it doesn't matter what you eat, go ahead and eat whatever you like, that's not true.
Absolutely.
Right.
So where 80% of your immune system is functioning, you can either improve that and strengthen that immune system, or you can actually destroy that immune system or harm it. And in fact, one of the things that we like to recommend to our patients in terms of our gut, and next week we'll be talking about with the researcher and scientist, is something called a beta-glucan. It's actually glucan 300. It's a polysaccharide that's made from natural substances. It comes from mushrooms, oats, and barley. Now we can grow it on culture. We use the strongest beta-glucan. An interesting thing is where it is activated on an empty stomach is the first part of the small intestine, the Peyer's patches, which next week we'll discuss with A.J. Langen, the owner and patent researcher of Glucan 300, how important that stimulates your immune system to be stronger. So today we're going to talk about foods, we're going to talk about testing, but there are certain things, and you can go to purebetaglucan.com, that's purebetaglucan.com, and learn about a product called Glucan 300. It is the most strongest patented, powerful beta-glucan on the market, and there's actually a study that you can actually read showing the comparison to 40 other things.
And if you buy that online, make sure you put in the promo code PAI, P-A-I, and get a wonderful discount.
Wonderful discount. Okay, so back to our discussion now. When we're talking about the gut microbiome, let's just talk about what can affect this gut microbiome, both positively and negatively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. First off, is food, right?
Big subject.
Everything we put in our mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
like we don't usually put like nickels, quarters, and dimes in our mouth. Well, some people do, but it's food, right? The very first thing we do is either going to build the gut or destroy the gut. I don't know of a food that's benign or has no impact. Either it's prebiotic in nature, it's healthful, or it's not, right?
Right.
So,
And the other aspect we'll look at, it's either an anti-inflammatory food or a pro-inflammatory food, right? So you're either going to cause a little bit more insult, or you're going to be causing a little bit more of a rejuvenation, restore, replenish, and
what are pro-inflammatory foods?
Well, pro-inflammatory foods, listen to episode 2, everybody, but on the anti-inflammatory diet, and we go into detail. But really, all pro-inflammatory foods are animal-sourced proteins and highly refined vegetable oils, things that are high in what we call omega-6 fatty acids, right? So anything that has a mother or face is a pro-inflammatory food, and anything that's heavily fried or refined is also pro-inflammatory food. That also includes highly refined sugars as well.
So our vegetables and fruits, those are anti-inflammatory.
All the vegetables, fruits, grains, legumes are anti-inflammatories.
Please eat your grains. You need your B vitamins for your brain, right?
Unless they have a food sensitivity, and we'll talk about that later on in the show. So how did you come about understanding this gut microbiome with doing the protocol? Because obviously you said that Kim, your wife, right, she had nutrient deficiency on testing, and then after you were eating foods like I'm assuming fermented foods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, correct. We left the previous sort of dogma that it's all about kefir and yogurts and stuff like that. I found a small study where it talked about very specific, there's like 6 or 7 bacteria that are found, for example, in wild sauerkraut. And so I just started doing that. I let go of the milk-based products for 30 days and just thought, we'll retest. And we put her on sauerkraut, and we stayed on a very prebiotic diet. Many of the foods that she was consuming had lots of easy to digest fiber that's fantastic. So we weren't relying on a fiber supplement. We were looking at food first to do that.
Yeah, and the importance to getting the plant-based diet or the fiber from plants is because you also get protein, you also get the fiber, antioxidants, and phytonutrients, and you just don't get that with just a fiber supplement that people take.
Your prebiotics, your probiotics, everything that you need, right?
And what these probiotics feed on is prebiotics, and prebiotics only come from fibrous foods, which only then hence come from plants.
Just real quick, how much prebiotic value is in a 12-ounce steak? Rhymes with zero.
None. Zero. Yeah. So when people actually do, so when people are on a paleo or ketogenic diet right now, which is the big fad right now, that's not backed by any true science. But when people are on what we see on social media right now, probably posting behind this, people say, "Well, I'm a paleo diet, I'm a keto diet," but they're not feeding their microbiome. So yes, they can lose weight by not eating the highly refined, foot-long Subway sandwiches, but their microbiome is actually turning into the wrong direction. And we actually have studies now that will show that based on the diet, you can improve your immune system by changing the microbiota, and how you change that is how you eat.
And also when you're feeding your gut and the microbiota, you are also feeding your brain. Yeah. Correct?
Very true. And
yes, because they're connected.
And one day of diet can destroy your gut or be destructive to your gut.
Right. Most people, when they start eating a healthier diet, and we all experience this, that we go out and then we go, oh, it was a holiday. Yesterday was Super Bowl. And some people are like, okay, I went out with some friends and I ate something, and then they're wrecked, and they just realize, like, why did I do that? It's because the food has so much chemicals, colors, additives, preservatives, and GMOs, which we'll talk about.
You wonder why on that commercial that guy's getting slapped by his food. He should be slapped by the
Yeah, your food should always be supportive and in nature. It should be kind to you. You shouldn't have to control your food or fight your food. And when we have commercials that are showing, eat these foods and then fight with them and control your heartburn. Heartburn is just an inflammatory process. IBS is an inflammatory process, and this microbiome is dysfunctional due to those inflammatory triggers.
It's an alert system inside your body telling you, hey, don't be doing that anymore. Right?
Absolutely crazy.
So, just like the food, and some people don't understand that all this packaged food is full of these toxins, right? And so we're trying to go to more fresh, live foods. So after this short break from our sponsors, who I really enjoy, I want to talk about a little bit more and get the listeners involved in understanding, how do we test this microbiome, and what does that assess, and then what do we do to keep improving that microbiome?
Hey, and don't go away. Listen to the commercial because it's important. Listen to the commercial about Glucan 300.
Yes, and even the book, An Inflammation Nation. We'll be right back.
You're clear?
All right, everybody, we're here on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us. We have Theo here, so we'll be doing just a little bit more discussions here. And I'm just going to sit here and talk a little bit while we're on the screen. This is the Glucan 300 for those at home who can view this. This is the strongest natural beta glucan on the market. It's about standardized to about 83% purity of 3D beta glucan. Next week, we will be having the expert, the owner of the patent. He'll cover all the research on that. So, can you hear me, guys?
Can you hear me now? Theo, can you hear us? Uh-oh. The audio's gone.
All right. So hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
I don't hear you. Did you hit the mute button or something? I'm
No.
not hearing you, Dr. Pi.
Oh, no.
Does anybody in Facebook, if they can let us know? I see
It
it.
says something about mute when you pass
No,
over.
that's
Yeah, I
okay.
hear you here fine.
Okay, good.
He doesn't hear us. I don't know
Says
why.
something about Facebook.
No. Can you hear us?
Hey, how about that?
You can hear us now?
No,
No?
I don't hear you.
Okay. Is that better? Can you hear us now?
No, he's not hearing you.
Hello, Theo?
I hear you fine still.
Okay. Okay. This is embarrassing, guys. Sorry for everybody watching here. We're having some...
Technical difficulties.
Can you say something, Theo?
Theo, can you hear me at all?
Bingo, we're back. I can hear you now.
Both of us?
I hear everybody.
Okay.
Okay, good. Whew.
So we can't do whatever we just
All right,
did.
we're coming back right now, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, guys, on Facebook. This is quite embarrassing, but as you know...
You are tuned in to Take Back Your Health. To reach our program today, call 1-866-472-5792. That's 1-866-472-5792. Or by email to radio@sanjevani.net. That's radio@sanjevani.net. Now, let's return to Take Back Your Health.
We're back. Thanks for listening, everyone. And I also want to give a shout out. We had a few more countries around the world. So I just want to give a shout out to all the listeners everywhere. Thanks for tuning in and sharing.
And because this is live, please call in with any questions or comments. We'd love to hear you and get you on the air.
Wonderful. Now, one of the things that we do want to talk about is how do we assess this microbiome? Okay, everybody comes in and they have a diagnosis of IBS now, IBS-D, gas, bloating, heartburn, reflux, diarrhea, constipation, those kind of things. But these are not diseases. These are just imbalances. And we can actually test that through now what we call functional medicine testing. In our office, and we always recommend patients or people who are listening to find a functional or integrative medicine doctor, and they can actually do what they call stool testing. And there's specific tests. If you read my book, I'll explain which ones and how to get them. But what happens is that these are tests that will actually test the microbiome. Right, so we will know, like, how do you digest? What is your digestive enzymes? Do people take all these digestive enzymes all the time? Do you need it or not? Right? It'll tell us, are you absorbing the fats, the proteins, the fiber? Are you improving the digestive function? And more importantly, from my perspective, we look at, is there inflammation? Is there white cells? Is there actually leaky gut? We can document that. And what leaky gut is, that certain foods come in then into the gut barrier, and as it leaks into these proteins from any kind of food, can trigger an inflammatory response. So most people that have GI symptoms, it's actually most commonly due to a form or a spectrum of what we call leaky gut or food sensitivities.
So these labs can fine-tune your digestive system.
Well, it gives us an assessment of what's happening, and rather than just scoping and saying, a lot of people will have a scope from above and below and it says it's negative, right? And then they go, here's an irritable bowel, here's a stool stopper, a stool goer, and here's an anti-anxiety pill and antidepressant. And then again, it's we're treating symptoms, and we want to go and look at the root cause. Right. The other thing is that it will assess on the stool testing, which is important, the microbiome in terms of the good bacteria. How much are there? Right, of the lactobacillus bifidus spectrum, and it will also look at small intestinal bowel overgrowth, overgrowth of candida fungal organisms, and also parasites as well.
So where can you get one of these lab tests?
Well, you'd have to contact a functional medicine doctor like me or any of the ones that are out there. Make sure that they're integrative trained, and then they can help you assess how to order the tests, and also then, more importantly, how to fix that. But, just with diet alone, most of these things can be resolved. We always like to talk about good products, and we'll talk about that shortly. And Theo, what is your experience with using a microbiome testing like a GIFX, for example?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you said functional, and I kind of shuddered for a second.
Oh, why?
Because there's a little bit of a confusion on the consumer side of it. Because a functional medicine has a bit of a movement around. So every doctor and So most people who are patients don't realize that your doctor's decisions are not usually made by your doctor. They're usually made by the company that he or she works for,
or insurance company, right?
Or insurance. So they're trying to figure out how in 13 minutes to give you the very best medical attention humanly possible, and figure out how to make sure that that's paid for, reimbursed by insurance, because that's what we all say we want. We don't want to come out of pocket. So when we say functional, within the movement of functional medicine, it's beautiful, there is kind of this new concierge model, and they're using a series of labs that I feel like you get lost in. So as an integrative and functional MD, I like your testing selections. They're my favorites. So for me, it's blood, urine, and stool all at the same time, non-negotiable. And you have to marry that one time with some type of food sensitivity. I'm the most interested in IgG and IgM or IG4 responses, because I don't need to know just about right now or 30 days ago. I want antigens, and I want to understand the antibodies. So those all actually work together. So I don't know how anybody could do anything different, but I actually adore the Genova's GIFX. They're comprehensive. When you combine it with a plasma or lipid, when you look at their blood, now you have a total snapshot of what they're not synthesizing. And if you look at their intake and you understand their diet.
Yeah, and aside of the assessment of how functioning or not functioning it is, or dysfunctional it is, and overgrowth or undergrowths, is that when we look at food testing, our goal is looking at what foods. So even though the whole foods plant-based diet, right, organic, non-GMO is now what we consider the gold standard in all the data.
For anti-inflammatory diet.
Anti-inflammatory diet, right? But we also want to make sure that how we, in our practice, and how I recommend all my patients to encourage their practitioners is to challenge them, is that now that we're on this healthy diet, how can we now individualize our personal recommendations? And so when we do like food sensitivity testing, like you're talking about food allergies or food sensitivity testing, we're looking at specific immune markers and immune reactions for getting exposure to foods. Some of them that happens within an hour of consumption, and some of those reactions can happen a few hours later, up to 4 days later. So, today being Monday, you could have had something on Saturday and have symptoms today of anything that ends with an itis. Remember, it all starts with the gut, but then the gut then goes systemically throughout the body. So we like to look at every person as an individual, and then kind of characterize what are the risk factors, or what are the least amount of things that you want to put in your body that are pro-inflammatory.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, when you're talking about all these diseases and the role of inflammation, goes back to gut. If you don't know what's going wrong in the gut, then how do we actually get a little bit more laser focused in?
Right. And if you want to tell the listeners a little bit about the Human Microbiome Project, because this is something that, this is truly where all information is, but we're just early in the story of
Very exciting.
Oh yeah, so you guys, this is amazing. Is that medicine? I'm thankful for. I'm not critical of. I think I'm just glad that we're all growing as fast as we can. But it is a little shocking to realize that we probably learned more in the last 2 years about the microbiome than we did in the previous 20. And you have to look at the Human Microbiome Project. 2009, NIH decides they're going to fund it because there's now enough evidence that says, oh my gosh, we actually don't understand something that is integral, that's primary. It's a fundamental element of fighting disease. And it's motivated by the fact that industrialized countries are having rampant disease epidemics of chronic diseases, all ending in itises, right? Including the cancer is not an itis, but it's one of the ones in industrials. So if you, so I'll share a link in on the Facebook group, the Facebook Live, showing it like that. Look, can you imagine we just started spending money 8 years ago?
I know. But it's a good thing because now we're understanding that even in the microbiome, those probiotics. Now, how many probiotics do we have is that we now know that there's about estimated 100 trillion with a T, 100 trillion of over 1,000 species.
All packed into this little tiny area.
And then when we have this 35-foot tract, right, 2 tennis courts worth of surface area, the amount of those probiotics has now been estimated to weigh about between 3 and 4 pounds. Right, so it's a lot. So a lot of people think of probiotics as these little homeopathic little sprinkles on things in a gummy bear or a little bit of a yogurt or something, but it's not. It's really the layering of all your immune system, regulating what's coming in, what's coming out, defending viruses, bacteria, and fungal organisms, parasites, and also helping the absorption of all the wonderful foods.
So you have the world's community inside of you.
Right.
That's amazing to think about, right? And it's all working together properly until you put in something like GMO food, right?
Insecticides, herbicides, and I'm not going to pick a fight with a big famous one that rhymes with Monsanto or glyphosate.
Right. And just to show how devastating those things are, is that we do now have studies, and it's in my book, and many books have been published since then, talking about the role of glyphosate and how glyphosate is causing a toxicity which is sprayed on the food, and that actually affects the gut barrier junctions. And this is the link now what we're finding out is what people have the gluten problem or gliadin problem. It's not the wheat itself, it's what's been sprayed onto the wheat in the United States, in which these patients don't have those problems in other countries. So those people who think that you have a gluten allergy, we actually like to test. We like to look at gluten, gliadin sensitivities and the full spectrum. Celiac disease is just the end disease, right? You actually have antibodies in that, but there's a full spectrum. So a lot of times people would just do conventional therapies and test it and say, oh, you don't have celiac disease, but that didn't mean that they didn't have a gluten or gliadin sensitivity. Now, if those patients are negative for that, they can have all the organic whole grains. Okay, so the idea is that we still need the grains. Remember that. And also, there's also spelt, millet, sorghum, brown rice, and quinoa. So there's tons of other grains inside of wheat that people can also enjoy and eat and get their nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. In fact, I just pasted into the Facebook Live a human study, because if you're looking for human studies on glyphosate, there's this huge glaring blank space, but you can look at it for chickens and bovine for cow, and it clearly shows that consumption of feedstock that's been treated with glyphosate or applying glyphosate to them is incredibly destructive to their biota. But for humans, apparently you can drink it, it's totally safe. So I just posted one on chlorpyrifos, because what are you supposed to do? So an organophosphate insecticide. So I showed one, and you know what it does is it wipes out Lactobacillus sp and Bifidobacterium sp, which are two super primary that we need for biosynthesis. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to biosynthesize bees. We're going to start telling people that they have genetic mutations. They can't methylate. They can't do. They have folate uptake issues, and they have ALA problems. And they're showing that they're actually low in omega-6, despite the fact that they're eating lots of omega-6s. We start seeing weird things in the human body, right, Doc?
Right. And with this dysfunction, just to kind of summarize for the listeners, if they didn't catch what those things that you're talking about, in a scientific way, but in a layman's terms, is how the body detoxifies. Right. So when they have these issues of methylation, how they detoxify something, how they break down, good stuff and bad stuff into smaller parts, and how they absorb it. If you don't do that appropriately, then you can actually feel more toxic. You can have more issues of inflammation. You can have neural inflammation to systemic inflammation. So it can go all the way from your gut to your brain. And we now have studies showing that, a lot of neurological diseases like Parkinson's, autism, schizophrenia, even anxiety and depression are now triggers of inflammation that are coming from foods that are coming into the microbiome and leaking in.
And this is why a lot of people end up in the hospital now with something called C. diff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Can you explain what C. diff is?
So C. diff C. difficile is a bacterial infection, overgrowth, that is given commonly as a secondary infection or secondary overgrowth due to antibiotic therapy. So someone might have a pneumonia or a surgery, they get some antibiotics, and then they get sick. And so it's a very difficult thing to treat, but we can treat that with other natural probiotic species like Saccharomyces boulardii. So anybody that has loose bowel movements or diarrhea coming from the hospital, we always give them Saccharomyces boulardii, which we offer. And so after this short message from our sponsors, we will then talk about what can you do? What aside of foods, which we'll talk about, what are the natural things that we can do? Probiotics, prebiotics, and other aspects that you can take to help restore, replenish, and rejuvenate your gut.
Even some Ayurvedic herbs.
Yes. and also how to improve your cell function of your GI tract.
Yes.
All right, we'll be back after these short messages.
You're clear?
All right, everybody at home, thanks for listening again. This is Dr. Sunil Pai and
Maureen Sutton.
And Theo Hanson here. I just want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors. It's a sponsor. It's a product called Pure Black. If you can see this now, I'm using the industrial jar, which they don't sell because we use a lot of it. But
what do they call that jar?
They call it the gangster jar.
Oh, the gangster
jar.
Yeah.
But the Pure Black, this is what they call Shilajit. If you go to pureblack.com, it's actually the PUR with a little umla, kind of like Motley Crue. You know, really cool looking thing. So I'm a rock doc, so I like these kind of things. Pure Black, pureblack.com. It's the best Shilajit that you can get on the market. If anybody does not understand what Shilajit is, you can go to the website. And also, if you purchase, you can get a discount. Just put promo code PAI, P-A-I is my last name, P-A-I for discount.
And we talked about it in the last episode.
The last episode, we had a wonderful discussion with Dr. Bharat Vaidya, who's a renowned world expert in Ayurvedic medicine, and he's both an MD in the U.S. Wonderful discussion. He explained a lot more than what we even know from a Western standpoint, from an Ayurvedic perspective of how this can help.
Show them what it looks like inside.
Basically, it's going to look like a
pitch.
It's a mineral pitch, comes from the mountains up in Russia and in India. Trump is not involved with this transaction. Hopefully, I don't get trouble on that one. And one of the things is that it's pure, so they track it from how they mine it. They actually have helicopters that go out, drop the microbiologist down. They do core sampling of the stones, and then they bring it back. It's all traceable. And then what you want to do is when it comes, you want to take about a pea size, like this, a pea size from the jar. And then you want to put it in a shot glass, fill it up with water, and then let it sit for about 30 minutes, and then it'll dissolve the mineral pitch into a water. And then you just take that shot once a day. Great for cell function. We'll talk about this now in the show.
Wellness.
You are tuned in to Take Back Your Health. To reach our program today, call 1-866-472-5792. That's 1-866-472-5792. Or by email to radio@sanjevani.net. That's radio@sanjevani.net. Now, let's return to Take Back Your Health.
All right, we're back today talking about the gut microbiome, inflammation, GI tract, and immune system with our special guest, Theo Hanson. And we just left, we were talking about what can we do? There are certain things that do disrupt the microbiome. We know that genetically modified organisms, GMO foods, are a problem. Glyphosate is a problem.
Food additives,
right? Mm-hmm. We also know that antibiotics. Now, we all have taken antibiotics, and we have to take antibiotics, right? We get infections. We have other issues. But one of the things is that in my book I detail is that we have studies now that one antibiotic, right? Which we're not against antibiotics, by the way. We need to use it. We have surgeries. We have infections. We use it in the hospital all the time. But one pill of an antibiotic can cause problems with the microbiome up to 18 months later. So the challenge is that we easily get rid of an infection, and thank goodness that we have antibiotics. The problem is that we're giving 7-10 day courses, which we need to do to kill an infection, but we also forget how to replenish the microbiome and keep this person's immune system stronger. So then once someone gets chronic antibiotics, now, I'm on my 6 Z-Pack for my sinus infection, Dr. Pai, or my respiratory or my bladder infection, then we start having this dysbiosis where the microbiome is thrown off. Then they get more food allergies, they get more sensitivities, they get more irritable bowel symptoms.
So 2 years later, you're discovering that you're having all of these difficulties, and you can't remember that you took
a simple
antibiotics.
Now, again, we're not against the antibiotics, but the idea is that people need to understand that they have to take probiotics and do other things along when they're taking antibiotics. And sometimes even doing the stool testing particularly is important when people have chronic use of antibiotics. So, for example, when we have patients that have car accidents or back surgeries, right, and they're in the hospital and they get multiple rounds of antibiotics, or cancer patients.
Right,
with
taking chemotherapy.
Wow. Chemotherapy hits the GI tract, no matter what type of chemotherapy, because GI tract, right, Theo, every 3 days is shedding itself. So the side effect of any chemotherapy is nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, those kind of things. So we have to keep that microbiome strong, and we're really good at doing that, supporting our patients, getting through their therapies and having improved outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Facebook Live too, by the way, guys. If anyone's listening, we also are on Facebook, and I've been posting all of the studies that are backing up what you're talking about and some things that we've been having conversations on, and it's marking me as spam now. So I'm officially a Facebook health spammer.
I didn't even know you were doing that. That was like magic.
That's probably because all the lobby groups are saying, hey, you're talking bad about these GMO foods.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think there's this huge audience that I don't talk to that you do is that you're running a clinic as a practitioner. IBD, IBS, Crohn's, colitis, these sufferers that are having all these intestinal issues and digestive issues. The work that I do is focused on cancer, but it's the same. We're having the same conversation.
Same exact conversation. It's the foundation. If you can't get the gut in order, then it doesn't matter whether it's just a cancer or just asthma, for example. Those things don't get better.
Well, let's talk about how we can make the gut better.
Okay, so first, anti-inflammatory diet, right? We talked about it episode 2, but again, everybody, you want to eat more vegetables,
what you eat.
more fruits, more grains, and again, organic as much as possible, because GMOs and also conventional is heavily sprayed. So when people want to go to look at the top dirty dozen, there's a website called ewg.org, Environmental Working Group.
Check that out.
Which we like to support them. And you can download for free the top 15 most heavily sprayed produce in America right now.
So while you're shopping, you can carry that with you, and then you can select the things that are not heavily sprayed to protect your gut.
Right. Eating organic is great. If anybody and everything that you can eat as organic is fine, then the world will be a great place. But sometimes access and cost is there, right? We have to take into account of those things.
Access in particular.
So what we want to look at is then look at the top 15. If you're eating any of those top 15 foods, that's where you should pay a little extra to save your health down the line. Remember, take back your health. Paying 10 cents extra per pound will save you maybe a $100,000 bill, $300,000 bill, $1.4 million bill, stage 4 end cancer, of having chronic exposure to all these things over time.
And then we were talking about prebiotics with Theo earlier. So maybe you can give us a short list of some prebiotics that we could use.
Rhymes with vegetables. Okay, next topic. I mean, honestly, a whole
like kimchi and sauerkraut
sauerkraut's just again, any of the wild ferments are always going to have present in them very natural bacteria that we don't have to create from scratch. We don't have to use as a starter. They're actually on the plants, and then when we actually ferment them, and it's a lot of fun. If you've never done it, it's super easy. But then the prebiotics too, we just have to look at everything in its whole form. Gives us what we needed to get. When we start extracting things and trying to figure out how to do go rounds, that's when we get in trouble. Convenience food is not our friend. Are you really so busy that you're not worth taking care of yourself? So your best prebiotics are really on your plate.
Right.
Right. And I drink something every morning called Dandy Blend that is made from chicory and dandelion root, and it is a wonderful prebiotic. So instead of coffee, that's what I have.
Chicory root, Jerusalem artichoke, dandelion, onions, garlic. Those are all just good prebiotics as well. All fibrous foods, but there's some that are just a little bit easier. So just throw those things on your salads, on your tacos, on your enchiladas, in your Italian food, your Mexican food, your Indian food. Eat more of those things. Try to eat things that have less packaged items, right? Microwavable foods, packaged things. Anything that comes from your car window, you probably should not be eating, right? We were not designed to eat from a car window. That's just, and
I think of the Flintstones when they drive up and they put a big Tyrannosaurus.
The car just falls over, right? Everybody knows this.
The
right?
ribs.
It's like, where do you get your protein? And it's like, okay.
That was a big salad, right? They put a big salad.
A big salad.
They didn't do that. All right.
And what we have to pay attention to is really what those foods are, because now when we start seeing children, in my practice since 1999, we started seeing a shift, and the shift is that since 1999 we started introducing a lot of GMOs, a lot of the glyphosate and pesticides, and what we start now having is young patients now, it's born after 1999, who have all these diseases that we wouldn't see usually till 60, 70, 80 years old. So now we have colitis, in autism patients, right? There's links of now more gut inflammation going to the brain. We now have kids with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And in fact, in my office, when I was a resident, when we had one juvenile rheumatoid arthritis case, they would page us at that time, and we all came driving from all the different clinics to see that one kid.
And what about celiac?
Yeah.
That was
and
rare.
And now I have drawers full of these kids. right?
Drawers full.
Just files.
The
I mean,
files,
it's like
yeah.
common. It's like it used to be like a rare thing. It's like, no, like people like, do you specialize that? No, this is that there's more people having these problems, and we need to look at what is in the environment. What are we feeding to our kids? What are we feeding to our parents?
And it's really hard with kids because, that they're brainwashed to think, oh, I've got to go buy that box of cereal, or I've got to buy that pizza, or, I've got to eat those things. And they have peer pressure. But, they're the ones who are really suffering right away now.
Right.
So, the education's got to get out there, and especially to that age group, from like 5 till, 20s.
Right. And yesterday, I think I was just reading on the post today, 700 million chickens were eaten yesterday at Super Bowl, weekend.
Wow.
700 million. And so when you think of like all the arsenic, all the things that, the bacteria, how many people will get sick from yesterday, and they're celebrating, but, it's just a pro-inflammatory food. And they were all fried with, all sorts of chemical sauces and flavors. So very, very
And why
unhealthy.
is there arsenic in chicken?
Well, the arsenic is used as an antibiotic to help the chicken get less sick, and also to help it plump up and to have that nice, color texture of the flesh. And so, but this is even in organic chicken. And so we have to also look at, they even use what they call vet antibiotics. I think we talked about that before in even organic chicken. So it's not classified as a human antibiotic. It's a vet antibiotic, but it's the same thing. So we really want to be, remember the foods.
We need to be discerning consumers.
Absolutely.
Right.
And
I just want to understand, you're saying that overuse of antibiotics in food systems for animals is bad for humans?
100%. Right. And people don't realize that, right? They don't realize like how much a factory farmed animal is given, and how much they consume, right?
They consume more antibiotics than anyone else on the planet.
And now we're seeing resistance in patients with antibiotics who've never had antibiotic exposure, but now we're looking at it from foods and microbiome dysfunctions due to those resistant aspects.
So what else can we do quickly?
So probiotics, let's just talk about probiotics. Now, the big problem with probiotics is that 90% of probiotics that you see in the market do not have the potency and the validity to stand the shelf time. Right, most of them are guaranteed potency at the time that they manufacture, not at the time that you take it.
Oh.
Right, so that means whatever you see on the bottle is about 10% of what's on the bottles in the bottle by the time you take the bottle, as they've manufactured it and they shipped it all around the country, and you go to the health store and pick it up.
So what about yogurt? When you buy yogurt off the shelf?
So the problem with the yogurts is that yogurt has very little actual active. So they'll say actives, but they don't actually calculate it. It actually is destroyed in the blending process, the heating process, and also has full of sugar, high fructose corn syrups, colors, chemicals, and also the dairy protein, which is itself pro-inflammatory, stimulating insulin growth factor in our patients. And again,
so what can we take?
So you can have good probiotics, first of all, and
which we talked about comes from foods.
Which comes from foods, fermented foods, right?
Vegetables,
kimchi, sauerkrauts, kombuchas, all those wonderful things. And you also want to make sure that the probiotics are guaranteed potency at the time that you take it. We usually give 25 billion to 100 billion in a serving, and we go up. Why? Because we have 100 trillion in our gut. So a lot of people think, oh my God, I'm taking 1 billion. It seems like a lot. I'm like, you have 100 trillion. It's like our national debt. We're never going to get there with just throwing a little bit of money in it. So it's just putting in perspective, like, there's no overdose of probiotics, but what we do have a difficulty is diversity. So this is where the foods are important, because there's only about 40 species commercially available. And so eating it from the foods adds more diversity to the microbiome. And we actually test that. And we actually can see, what we've seen in a lot of patients, that they can improve a few species by taking good probiotics, like what we give. But the difficulty is that they don't have the diversity.
So if we have like 100 trillion in our gut,
right?
I mean, there must be 1 million different types.
There's over 1,000 species, probably more than that. But yes, we definitely need to change the diversity. And so over time, you'll see probiotic species get more and more and more.
We'll be discovering new strains.
New species, new strains. Everybody has to fight about who patents it, who made it, how it's produced. And also they have to make sure that it's safe, so that when they want to introduce it, it's not going to cause any issues.
Right. Yep. Overgrowth of a new good bacteria.
Right. Now, one of the things, just making sure that, you don't get a good amount of probiotics, just taking a probiotics gummy or a simple, one species, 1 billion that the GI doctor recommended you get at the local pharmacy. So we really have to talk about replenishment as replenishment, not just more of a placebo of replenishment. Okay. And so after the next break, we will come back and we will then further have this discussion about how we can keep your microbiome strong, how to keep your immune system strong, and
Stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll have more discussion on Facebook Live.
You're clear?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Hopefully you're learning and understanding and enjoying our show. Again, another couple of things we want to talk about is Bosmeric-SR. For those who want a strong anti-inflammatory, although we didn't talk much today, I might talk about it in the next segment, how you can lower inflammation not only from eating a plant-based diet and looking at food allergy testing, is looking at Bosmeric-SR. It's the strongest natural anti-inflammatory available. I think there was an article that I wrote for the Cancer Tutor that's just been recirculating now on Facebook, and it goes into the details and descriptions on looking at what is curcumin, what is boswellia, what is ginger and black pepper.
And please read that.
And people need to read that, because I saw some comments yesterday and it was like, oh, turmeric doesn't work for me and this doesn't work for me. I'm like, well, there's a difference in potency, purity, and source. And most people buy generic turmeric. 95% curcuminoids, the study came out, we'll repost that soon. Again, that 95% generic curcuminoids do not have really very little to any inflammatory aspects and immune benefits. So we like to look at using real data, 60 plus human clinical studies, anti-inflammatory, again, the best thing that you can use for inflammation.
So it's okay to use fresh turmeric or turmeric powder, but it's never going to get where this is going to go.
And this has a 20-minute onset of action and an 8-hour sustained release. So do not take non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Please read my book, An Inflammation Nation, right here. And you want to make sure that you are not taking ibuprofen, Motrins, Advil. Those things have a devastating, we should mention that in the show, that those are devastating to the microbiome, okay? So here's Bosmeric-SR, and anything else that we want to show again?
20 seconds.
Okay. So again, we're just going to just give one shameless plug again, because I like this product. I love it. And it's great because our guy who's going to come, Dr. Zach Bush, in a few weeks, will talk about humic fulvic acids and important things like Pure Black and his product Restore.
You are tuned in to Take Back Your Health. To reach our program today, call 1-866-472-5792. That's 1-866-472-5792. Or by email to radio@sanjevani.net. That's radio@sanjevani.net. Now, let's return to Take Back Your Health.
Well, we're back. Thank you all for listening. It's been a great show so far with Theo Hanson, Maureen, and I talking about the gut microbiome. One of the things that we were talking on the break, for those who weren't able to listen on Facebook Live, was the devastating effects that non-steroidal anti-inflammatories have on the gut. So one of the worst things that you can do, aside of eating a standard American diet, right? Packaged food, GMO foods, fried foods, microwave foods, all those kind of standard conveniences, is taking like the Motrin, Advils, ibuprofens, Aleve, naproxen, Celebrexes, those kind of drugs. NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, because they have a black box warning. And one of the black box warnings for that, meaning you can end up in the black box, is that it can cause a GI bleed, stomach intestine perforation at any time that you take it, even if you just take one.
The first time you take it.
Right. So there's no liability for the drug manufacturers. And again, 1/3 of the population takes this every day. That's why we created, Bosmeric-SR, the strongest natural anti-inflammatory. So going back to the gut microbiome, is keeping the gut microbiome strong. And we were talking about, antibiotics and chemotherapies. And, people have to take antibiotics and people have to take chemotherapies when indicated in appropriate times. But it's like, how do we assess them is through testing and then restructuring that gut through diet, right? Doing things like the Vita protocol, right, at thevitaprotocol.com. That's the juicing protocol that our guest here, Theo, has used very successfully on many, many, many people. And we've also seen wonderful results. And also looking at how do we then replenish. So going back to replenishment of probiotics is that some of the probiotics that you get are not potent, right? So they'll have fancy names. One of the things that you want to see on a probiotic is that it shouldn't just say proprietary blend. It should actually list each individual ingredient of which species and how much.
All supplements should.
Well, they should. But what happens when they kind of put this blend, like, for example, if they say proprietary blend of these 10 probiotics, it's usually the first probiotic, which is about 90% of what's in that bottle. Right, so they might cachet on sounding like, oh, it's got all these other species which I've read about, but what they're really giving you is the top one. So we like to list on ours. We list it. The other thing is the importance is it acid stable? can it pass the stomach acid? Because if it doesn't, then it'll be destroyed in the stomach, and then again, less potency when you take it. So our probiotics are actually guaranteed potency not only up to a year after you take it at room temperature, but it also is acid stable, so it does pass through. So you can go to our website at Sanjevani Store, SANJEVANI store.com, and you can then enter a promo code PI, and you can get a discount on our probiotics,
PAI.
both pills and powders, right? But I'm all about the foods. Like Theo says, we need to be getting as much diversity and nutrient density along with that from the foods.
So yesterday we were talking with Theo about something very interesting called FMT.
Oh,
You remember that?
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You better take this issue serious, or you're going to be part of the FMT test crew, which is a fecal matter transplant. Yeah. Well, I tell you what. You brought up a good point yesterday, and I think that if we had 20 more minutes, it would have been worthwhile. But I do think it leads to that rat study that was kind of mind-boggling. It was a cancer study where they looked at 2 different suppliers of laboratory rats, and it's just known in science that when you give a sarcoma to this particular rat from that breeder, that it'll respond better to certain medications, and the other one doesn't. So a scientist said, why? And he went and looked, and what it turned out to be was the gut microbiome was different because the breeders fed their rats differently, and they found out that you could FMT them, or you could have them cohort together for 3 weeks, and at 3 weeks their biomes would become the same. Isn't that interesting?
So the scary thing is that now that we have different rats, even though they're like scientific rats and they're bred in certain ways, then we can look at now a lot of data might be skewed, or a lot of drugs might not make it to market because all of a sudden it didn't work because the rats itself weren't eating correctly.
Right. Or we gave
And
credit
they're the
to
first line of testing.
Yeah, or we gave credit to a drug when actually, as it turns out, that if you actually strengthen the other line of rats, if you gave them the access to that same biota, they would then become, within a few weeks, they would equally do well because these rats did respond extremely well to healthy diet. Very strange. So, but here's the thing: is I look at the clock and I think, oh my gosh, how do we help people in a meaningful way? And I have, for me, I'm just 5 bullet points.
Okay, go ahead, shoot.
Super fast.
That's what I want to know.
Find a really good integrative MD and look at concierge medicine. Just be open to the fact that you're just not likely to get it in the current business, in the current medical model. That's a blood, urine, and stool labs. Be careful with your cleanses. If you've got somebody in the semi-alternative space who's directing on cleanses, use them very carefully. Essential oils are powerful, but we need to be
very powerful medicine.
The overuse of oregano, for example, and its destruction. Food. Pharmaceuticals are both good and bad. Like, we need them sometimes to go in after pathogens, and this is what we rely on a medical doctor for. We can't all be Google doctors, as it turns out. We need to have medical doctors to help us to identify pathogens and how we manage them. Probiotic supplement schedules, water.
Right.
People don't realize the heavy metals and the poisons that are in water and how that reacts. And we had a conversation about metals and how that changes the output, the metabolization, all these bacteria in our gut, right? And then stress management. So those are my hot points for anybody listening. If you can focus on those, you have a winning chance of actually getting out of this alive. Because if you look at a study I tried to post that got spammed again, industrialized countries are suffering. They now know, as of 2014, science, their research is looking at it saying, okay, look, there's a huge difference in industrialized countries. And it has to do with the fact of what we're exposed to,
100%.
The planetary microbiome metabolizes, some of which it can correct poisons, and some of it's creating something that we have no idea what it is or what it's going to be. And then we end up being the clinical trial,
Absolutely.
Products.
And, I want to just touch base before we run out of time today is talking about the essential oils, because everybody's in on this essential oil kick and revolution. But, essential oils, in my opinion, and those people who are actually trained medically, is that we don't take essential oils internally. The appropriate use of essential oils is not to be, any of the products that are sold by MLM companies should not be taken internally, no matter how much they say. None of them are certified. There's no such thing as certification. But let's take oregano oil. Even when we take supplements, there's a supplement on the market for arthritis, and it's one of the best-selling supplements for arthritis in health stores, and it has an ingredient of oregano. Oregano has anti-inflammatory benefits, but also antimicrobial benefits. So as they take that for their knee pain, it actually is like an antibiotic knocking out good stuff in their gut. Now, like it'd be interesting that they also sell probiotics to you. That's another story. But we have to be careful of people like thinking, oh, it's great for one thing, or we take it indefinitely. So a lot of people will take a candida formula or a parasite formula or something like that. They all have antimicrobial actions, but antimicrobial actions are antimicrobial, whether it's coming from Pfizer or coming from a farm. Right? It's the same thing. There's collateral damage that knocks out good stuff, but also knocks out bad stuff. But we have to be careful that some people think that it doesn't knock out good stuff just because it's natural.
It's powerful medicine.
Right? So we will have an entire show coming soon on water, because that's going to be interesting, talking about water, filters on water, structuring water, pHs of water. Do we need to do this or not? Really eating a plant-based diet is going to be key for all of that. But everybody should be drinking at least some kind of filtered water.
How do we filter our water? So that'll be an interesting subject to talk about.
And, even if it's a simple, cheap filter, that's still going to give them a better benefit for their microbiome than just drinking right out of the tap.
We started to recognize the importance of using plastic bottles that weren't so flexible. But where did that stuff go? All those BPAs were in the gut. It was our gut that was actually, as they metabolized, and that's where we started creating these toxicities and stuff.
Absolutely. And then we can test, we can show that as people change their diet very quickly, relatively very quickly, we can actually change the microbiome pattern. So not only just reduce the bad things with specific antimicrobials by testing, which is correct or not, but more importantly, we can look at how do we change the actual species that are there and improve the species that are more beneficial for us. And that is through just testing, getting appropriate diet, and the right type of supplementation for restoring the leaky gut and other aspects of inflammation in the immune system.
So what's next? What are we talking about next week?
Next week, we're going to be talking about the immune system, and we're going to be talking about the glucan 300. We're going to be talking about what a beta-1,3-D glucan is and how important that will be to your health.
All right. And who's our special guest?
Our special guest will be AJ Lanigan, and he's our friend here. You're going to love that discussion, because we want to learn how, what can we take on top of our diet, stress management, other things that can reduce your inflammation, but also more importantly, boost your immune system. Thank you all for enjoying.
Thank you, Theo, for being here with us.
Thanks, Theo. And thank you all for listening to us. Now, our goal is to really help America, get their great gut back again, right? Make America's gut great again. That's going to be our slogan.
That's a great one. I like that.
All right. Pie for president.
No, pie for promo discount on any of the websites. Pure Black, PURBLACK, PURBLACK.com, and purebetaglucan.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next week, and best of health.
All right, we're clear.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We're on Facebook Live. We have some more time. So I don't know, Theo, if you can see it. I can't see it here. If we have any questions or anything else that people can send in or ask us, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I don't know where everybody would be commenting at, because I realized just now that for some reason I was following you on one but not another. We're friends. You have multiple.
Oh, here's someone
okay,
from
so
Serbia.
let me here. So
and Ula.
This is
how fun.
Jeliko Milenkovic.
Sorry about the bad mispronunciation of your name, but thank you very much for listening. We have someone here, Ula, who says love sauerkraut and home fermented pickles. Yes, wonderful things.
I know she makes her own
to your diet, so that's good. I think she even showed us a picture. Some cauliflower foods that look like chicken, and her husband knows chicken. So that's good. We love people sharing their recipes on Facebook and telling their stories. And soon, I think we're going to invite actually Ula to come talk about neural acupuncture and how that helped with her son, a treatment that Dr. Jason Howe did. We'll have him on the show probably about 2 weeks or so.
You don't know that yet, Ula, but we're going to have you on the show.
Yeah. So let's see. Anybody else?
She just wrote, "Love you guys more than sauerkraut."
I hope so. I hope we're a little bit sweeter than the sauerkraut. That's for sure. But
we'll help protect your microbiome.
We really appreciate everybody sharing these posts. We also appreciate people going back and listening to the archives. If you missed the show, please listen to it. The show is being tracked by the network, and the better people listen to it, the more we'll be able to provide more information and also get other guests.
Look, your friend Heather just joined. Hi, Heather.
And Shannon. A big shout out to Shannon there. And also, let's see. Oh, yeah, Heather joined. Thank you, Heather. I haven't talked to you in a while. So a lot of cool things. Thanks for posting and sharing all your friends
and
who are.
Kimberly Hanson. Theo's wife is here with us.
Yes.
I know her. I know that one.
Thank you, Kimberly.
So we definitely want to thank everybody from joining us today. And let's, Theo, anything else you want to talk about? We have a few more minutes. So why don't we just spend a little bit more time? If you have anything else to talk about?
Was there anything we missed?
We missed, like, we can speak for like 20 days on this subject. And okay, well, let me just talk real quick. I do want to emphasize that we will be having a retreat coming soon. And we'll probably talk about it next week, but it's going to be in Curacao in August. I believe it's the 5th through the 12th. And Theo and Kim will be joining us. We'll be having some wonderful other speakers and chefs and cooks. And
the entire island is a wellness island.
And we're going to do a food as medicine retreat.
That.
And it's going to be specific, talking about everything that we had here in workshop, open format. You can hang out with us. You can meet us. And it's going to be an interactive thing, hands-on, learning how to cook, spices, nutrition,
and imagine
food.
what that beautiful seawater can do for your entire body.
It's like a big float tank.
It's so beautiful.
It's the ocean. It is a float tank.
That's so beautiful. I almost cried when I saw the ocean. It was just that gorgeous.
So shout out to Curacao. Everybody out there, thanks for listening as well. We have some great concepts and wonderful things going on there.
I actually have my Curacao shirt on. It has seashells all over it.
Oh, look at that. That's nice. I like it.
I'm ready to go. It's navy blue, just like it's all about the water.
Wash it and pack it up for August.
I will. I'm ready.
We're taking it along. Good.
I'm super ready to flip flop it. I probably won't even wear shoes. I'll just walk around the property barefoot because we can, right?
You can.
So I think I didn't get to tell the listeners, but when people do the microbiome testing, the GI effects test, is that if something comes back positive on the test, like say you have a candida or a parasite or some kind of bacterial overgrowth of SIBO, instead of the regular doctors, what they do is they just prescribe an empiric antibiotic. Like let's just knock it out. Or here you go to alternative practitioner. Oh, it sounds like candida. Let me just give you oregano oil. Or here's antifungal, right? Nystatin or some kind of antifungal fluconazole diflucan. What we like to do is on the testing, if anything is abnormal, it will actually grow it out, identify the species, and then it tests for resistance and sensitivities. What that means, it tests which of the top 5 antibiotics and which of the top 5 natural antibiotics does it work for better. So, because you believe it or not, a lot of things come back resistant. Why? Because maybe you've taken a lot of antibiotics, or more importantly, everybody else in America has taken antibiotics and it's become resistant. So some people say, gosh, oregano doesn't work. Yeah, because everybody's been taking it.
And by now it's in our water.
Or diflucan doesn't work because everybody's taking it.
Right.
So there's a lot of aspects that we want to be very specific. If we give an anti, even a natural anti, it's as targeted as possible and less toxic so we can get better effects. Because remember, we're always going to be causing a little bit of harm, even with natural antimicrobials.
And you were talking about food allergy testing and how many foods are included in that.
Yeah, so we like to look at about 57 foods. Over the last 10 years after doing this over and over in thousands of patients, we kind of pared down. We used to have a panel of 200 foods. We kind of pared it down to 57 things that came out more commonly positive in the standard American diet, right?
Heinz 57.
Heinz 57. No endorsement for that. GMO foods and corn syrup products. So I'll probably get a bad letter from the family or cease and desist. But what we want to look at it is for those people who are more plant-based, already eating healthy diet, then we actually can provide them with a document where they can pick the foods, vegetables, fruits, grains, legumes, spices, herbs. I mean, there's over I think 500 different foods that you can choose from. And, but you pick the things that are common in your diet, something that you eat like 3 times a week. That's going to come showing something. We don't pick rare things,
So it's interesting to note that you've narrowed it down to 57 foods because people tend to eat like the same 5 meals over and over and over again. Right?
But the same 5 foods will probably have about 57 different ingredients because everything is packaged, everything's prepared. And so like someone says, oh, I think I'm just eating pasta. I'm like, what's in the wheat? What's in the sauce? What's in the toppings? And that itself has 10 ingredients each or so. So we like to look at common and uncommon things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this whole topic is so exciting to me because at the end of the day, I don't think we can create health and wellness in the human body without bringing in the conversation of the microbiome and the fact that it's like this triangle where there's food, there's the bacteria in our gut, including pathogens and balance, and then there's our brain, and they're all connected. We actually don't get to uncouple them and act like they're separate. They actually all work together. And I was actually doing a study on antigens and antibodies and taking a look at it. And one of the reasons that you test on the platform that you do is that you can look at these multiple IG responses because they actually behave differently. So you have like anaphylactic level, like instantaneous. But one of the things I really wanted to, if anybody's included in watching this, I want to empower you with is you also have to understand what's also been going on in your body long term, and then what it looks like when you eat those foods and how those attach to a different, they occupy something else in your body. And then we end up with these long-term chronic diseases because you keep eating foods they're actually effectively allergic or at least highly irritated by. But then you look like, why do I have IBD and IBS? Well, you've been on long-term pharmaceutical drugs, you've been on prophylactic antibiotics for reasons and purposes. You're eating, insufficient foods or foods that you can kind of like navigate around your discomfort. And so how do we bring them relief? Well, it's a long haul back, right? And I think that we have to start understanding, again, the role of everything, but it's going to really be in having a great leading practitioner who understands the sensitivities of the gut. And I think that's what's missing right now in the majority.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't give enough credence and importance to, like, after a therapy, so after chemotherapy treatments or after all of a second I was with the pneumonia, like that microbiome is not going to just be restored by just taking a probiotic once a day for 7 days. Everything's like, oh, I just took it when I took my Z-Pack. I'm like, all right, now we got to be talking about months of replenishment because, again, we're only giving, say, 100 billion or more in a serving, and there's 100 trillion in the gut. And so we can measure and say, wow, these people are so deficient, even if they're taking the right kind.
And you know what? We haven't even talked about parasites yet.
We haven't talked about parasites. We haven't talked about we haven't talked about gut, psych, and brain, neurotransmitters, anxiety, depression, those kind of things.
So that's why we need 100 trillion good guys in there fighting for us.
Well, that's like we have like a lot of people in America, right? Every person is unique. Everybody plays a role. They have different genders and belief systems and cultural backgrounds, and they come from and they all participate and make what really makes this country great. But then we also have parasites, and we do have some other bad things that can cause a dysfunction to that. Mm-hmm. So. Anyways, hopefully this has been an exciting discussion.
We'd love to hear from you. Please send us messages.
Send us messages, and if you can
call in, you can call in on the show too.
Yeah, we definitely want some callers.
Because it's live.
And we also want to, go to radio at Sanjevani, SANJEVANI.net, and send us some questions. We'll definitely want to answer them in the episodes on the air. Just tell us where you're from and your first name and your city or state or country, and we'll give a shout out to you on the air and answer the questions, because our goal here is to not only just tell us what we know and share our information with you, but also to help guide you. If you don't have an integrative medicine physician here, we got a great team right here that we can provide you evidence and information for free that you can help you take back your health.
How do we find you, Theo?
That's great. I tried to post again. I'm locked out on spam for putting science out there.
No.
So our favorite word after cancer is life. And so Vita is the Latin word, VIDA. And so it's thevitaprotocol.com. And there's just a ton of free resources, you guys. And one of the things free, like open source, everything that I learn in the world, we try to give away readily. We just feel like that's kind of the hope of humanity, is to stop acting like everything's proprietary and for capital gain. So if anybody can take something away who has a family member themselves struggling through cancer, I wanted to give, and since I can't post it, I'll post it later, but there's an interesting NIH study paid for by NIH that was looking at a bifidobacterium, which happens to be very present in fermented foods. But so they had here's a really quick quote: sequencing of the 16S ribosomal RNA identified that bifidobacterium is associated with anti-tumor effects. And yet when we test people, Dr. Pai, with the GI effects, what do we see? That they're almost always really low in bifidobacterium. So
particularly that one.
Yeah. And it's like, and then we're shocked that they're not enjoying anti-tumor benefits. Well, it's because it's not. Remember, 90% of us is not us. 90% of us standing here is really designed to manage this life experience. And then I really would hope that people listening to the show would question and look around at our adoption of these industrialized conveniences, lifestyles, things that we think are so terribly important, what has that really given us? Because when we look at countries or groups of people that are the longest living, that claim to be the lowest stressed or happiest or most content, they don't actually have a lot of the stuff that we think has just become part of our culture that 50 years ago, 60 years ago, we didn't have any of that. I mean, we all grew up on rotary phones.
Yeah, I know. We didn't eat from car windows. I'm still stuck. I think Michael Pollan has that little book, right? He had these little like
the tips,
tips thing,
food
and it was
tips,
like, don't eat anything that your grandmother couldn't pronounce.
That's right.
As an ingredient. Don't eat from a car window. Those are simple things, but those simple things are profound, because if you think about it, it's like, why am I eating food from a window of my car?
Yeah.
It's not convenient. It's conveniently making us sicker, and it's not nutritious for us. So we really want to go back to spending more time with family, more sitting at the table,
right.
and kind of connecting with the food itself has the prana and the energy that feed us back. And
well, if only we could get together and we could change some of the systems that are unhealthy to healthy systems. We all need to work together on this and tell the bad guys no. Yep. We're not buying that. We're not eating it. We're not supporting it.
And one thing we want to let the viewers know on Facebook is that we are actually working on a project, Theo and I and everything like this, on talking about, we're going to do a pilot program, but we're really looking at a lifestyle change program. Yep. And, looking at, can we, especially with a cancer patient, can we change their epigenetics, which we know that's been documented in clinical studies, like the 7 or 8 parameters that are effective for changing that, which is like gut microbiome, immune system, stress reduction, etc., and changing the diet. Can we do that 12 weeks prior to someone doing therapies for cancer treatment? So our goal is not saying we're competing or we're treating cancer. Our goal is looking at, can we get your body stronger in a better place to receive treatments of whatever therapy you choose? And if we are able to do that, then your outcome will always be better. But a lot of people just rush into either conventional, or more importantly, they also rush into alternative therapies. Oh, I'm getting IV vitamin C and Laetrile and this. But if your terrain is not good, then you even don't get the benefits. And we still want to even look at evidence-based therapies to make sure that they're not just changing healthy stuff and still getting sold, snake oil.
Yeah, and we've got to drop this this rhetoric that's rolling around that people keep picking up and saying the government's thwarting all these cures. It's like, right. Okay, we definitely have bias. 6 major companies pay for 96% of studies that are performed. NIH picks up the tab for a bunch of others. And yes, I get it. It's capitalistically driven. And so a lot of time and energy gets spent in trying to figure out, does my new drug slightly improve benefit over this other drug? And I get all that stuff. But at the end of the day, like so many things have been well studied. Vitamin C is vitamin C. But in a drip bag, it's ascorbic acid. It's not vitamin C. And when studied, it didn't have the efficacy.
Right into your brain.
Right.
Right into your veins.
And everybody runs to say, hey, we get vitamin C for cancer. But interesting enough, I was actually looking at a website for an integrative physician who treats a lot of cancer patients, that a patient of mine, like, hey, what do you think of this guy? And I'm like, well, he seems really good, qualified and all. And interesting thing is, he said, I'm using vitamin C for cancer. But every link that he has posted that is actually published, it shows that the vitamin C does not have an anti-tumor effect directly. It just helps with quality of life. So yeah, if someone has fatigue, someone has this or that, that's fine. But $300 an IV, I'm like, you need to have anti-tumor effect if you have cancer. Right. So everybody runs over like, I'm going to go to Mexico. I'm going to go to these clinics, or even some of these alternative clinics in the U.S. And it's like, well, it can help with wellness, kind of quality of life, but it's not an anti-chemotherapy, like a natural chemotherapy. The data hasn't supported, and our experience, which we've seen with hundreds of patients, has not shown that. And so, I would be heavily promoting it and wearing a T-shirt. It's like, do this if it really worked. And because it's not that I'm against it, it's just I'm against when things are being sold and people are very critical of drugs, which they should be. I'm probably the most critical. I look at pathways and look at, like Theo, we look at all the research. But then for some reason, when people jump the ship to alternative therapies, they don't even ask the question. They said, well, I saw it on Facebook. I read it on the website, and I just, I heard. But then I'm like, well, here's all the stack of information you want on the drug, of why you may not take this drug, or why you want to take the drug. But then when it comes to something else like natural or the, that we don't get here, it's like conspiracy. Oh, it must be better. We've proven that many of those things, unfortunately, don't work as we wanted them to.
Right.
And I think we might even have a whole show just on alternative treatments that you may be very cautious of, and places that you might steer away from, because people end up spending a lot of money.
Cancer is not tourism, folks.
Yeah. And so there's cancer clinics everywhere that people are, dropping, $50,000, $75,000 in cash. And they're not questioning that. It's being wire transferred overseas into the accounts and all these other places. But again, just as much as we're critical about the hospitals, which I am, right? And I want people to go the best. I still want people, if they're going to a clinic paying cash, that they should get an outcome.
100%. I think we just all have to be held to the standard. All of us do. And if we would all hold each other to that standard, because I know I just bagged on ascorbic acid, vitamin C drips, but if you combine them with artesunate, it's been studied that it can ignite apoptosis or bring it back into where it was missing. So it doesn't mean that you get that drip and you cured cancer, but it could be meaningful. So when people say, oh, like the government's just thwarting evidence, it's like, well, why didn't it thwart that piece of evidence?
Right.
And why are you taking artesunate by itself, which doesn't have efficacy? But if we just put these two things and everybody swears they're curing cancer, we put them together, we do see that they have some kind of anti-cancer benefit. But they can't.
Right. We know that it can be synergistic with other things as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that is important, but using it as a sole agent so far, evidence-based wise, even though like right now there's 1,000 clinics that are giving it, and right now probably have even our own patients some clinic that are getting it, But again, so hopefully this was some good information. We're gonna have to get off now. So thank you all for listening. Again, like us on Facebook, share it, listen to archives, go back and listen to archives, and share with people who might be interested in those topics, because this will be a good introduction on that. And then go to aninflammationnation.com. And for those who want to read my book and get some basic information, that's a great place to start of how to change your lifestyle with 10 easy steps.
Page 23. Page 23. I'm telling you right now, it's the best reference book you can buy.
All right. Thanks, Theo. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody on Facebook.
See you all next
Best
week.
of health. See you next week. And we'll be talking
AJ
about
Lanigan.
AJ Lanigan and what a beta-glucan is. Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks.